is putting away $6,500 a year or $7,000 a year or $8,000 a year, is that sufficient enough for you to be able to build enough wealth over time to be able to retire?
What they're not talking about are limitations like this that make it impossible for this to be the pay the taxes on the seeds. Well, if you're only planting 2 or 3 seeds, darling, what are you eating? What's the harvest?
What we're highlighting today, and kind of starts out with a quick example. And this example is related to Miles and Layla. So in this gentleman, he actually reached out to me. He's 37 years of age. And again, harp on the point that Angelique was making around people feeling nervous or having a concern that somehow they'll be judged when they meet with me. So a 37-year-old having his home paid off to me is a huge feat. But he was concerned about meeting with me because he thought that I was going to view that differently. When to me, I think it took him from age 30 to 37 to pay his home off. So to have his home, and I want to say it's $300,000+. I didn't really get into those details because those details didn't matter. But to have his home paid off at the age of 37 to me is monumental. He has free and clear cash flow, meaning just specifically related to no longer having a mortgage. Not having that mortgage gave him additional cash flow of around $1,000 a month. And he's been putting away over this last period, over these last 7 years, and built up a nest egg of about $55,000 sitting in his savings. And so outside of that, if you got the company's 401k, they've got other vehicles, other things that they have in play. But the main conversation today was around, hey, I'm debt free. And I saw your video around now what? And I started to think, started to become concerned. What is it that I should be doing with these funds? And how much time did I lose because I decided to pay off my home? I think just the first thing that should be acknowledged is kudos to this gentleman and his wife for paying off their home in 7 years. Pretty powerful. And so from an opportunities cost perspective, again, being debt free and it taking 7 years to get there, that's one thing. But what could have happened? What were the opportunities within that 7-year period that may have passed by? Talk a lot about a secure compound interest account. What would it look like had that secure compound interest account started earlier, started 7 years earlier? Where would they be at this point in relation to their true goal? But in order to understand their true goal, we have to kind of peel that back. And so that's kind of where this conversation started around. Now what? Now that we are quote unquote debt free and we no longer have a mortgage payment and we've got this consistent cash flow that we are saving, we are putting it away. But what does this look like? Now, what is the opportunity to be able to put this money to work? And in the midst of putting that money to work, it kind of brings up the second item, which is cycles, time. What's the impact of waiting 7 years before I get started? And so what's the impact of, instead of starting here, we start at age 37. And again, if we're talking about a secure compound interest account, putting our money to work and making it work for us, where there's a difference in the impact of time. But to me, that's not even a relevant conversation to be having here, because what's the likelihood of this 30-year-old having enough cash flow to be able to start a secure compound interest producing vehicle? So, that's a fact that I think he was concerned that, based off all of the videos he's watched with us, he was concerned that was somehow going to be impactful or somehow going to make a difference as to what that conversation looked like. Meaning I was going to jump on him because he missed an opportunity to start 7 years earlier with building wealth. But to me, I don't know that he would be in the same position had he not done what he did. I don't know if he would be in the same position had he not adopted teachings of the Dave Ramseys of the world that said, you know what, credit is bad and leverage is bad and focus on paying off your debt. Like, I'm not mad at the fact that, hey, yeah, maybe he did lose 7 years, but still he is 37 years old and he's debt free. Now, what does that look like? But yes, the truth of the matter is time does have an impact. There is an impact to the amount of compound cycles that are available to him. And so if he was 57 years of age at this time, meaning if he had the same opportunity at age 50, and then by age 57, we're having this conversation, it's a different conversation because now he has less compound cycles to be able to hit his goal. So, again, when you're starting and how you're starting and what those variables are, all of that matters. And I think for this particular person's situation, I don't see it as a factor because he has the time available to be able to make up for that time lost. What he's currently doing with the money that he has available. So what he's currently doing is he's got that $1,000 a month that he's been putting into savings, and he's amassed the savings of somewhere around $55,000. So he's got this $55,000 that's continuously growing, putting away $1,000 a month into it. And he didn't say it was a high yield savings account. So rather than take the perspective of something less than 1%, I just assumed that his 55,000 is making 1% over time. So he's putting his $12,000 away. But what would that $12,000 look like at retirement age? Is this enough to be able to put him in a position to where any income that he's able to generate off putting this $12,000 away, is it enough for him to be able to beat inflation? And so the other thought around that is he's also, in addition to the $1,000 a month that he's putting into savings, he's also maxing out his IRA. I'm not sure if it's Roth or traditional, but I just call it a traditional IRA. He's maxing that out. And so at the time, it was roughly $6,500 a year. But as of now, it's actually $7,000 a year that he's able to put away. So when I was kind of breaking down those calculations for him, I went ahead and used the 7,000 throughout this period of time. But again, what we know about traditional vehicles like this, and again, this is what he was taught. This is how it's communicated in those Dave Ramsey communities. As you're following the baby steps, it is absolutely get that IRA started and max out that IRA once you've paid off all your debt. So he was just following the plan as though the plan was prescriptive. And so the thought process is, hey, is this going to be enough for you to be able to retire? And whenever I'm sitting in a space having conversations about IRAs, that's always my stance. It is putting away $6,500 a year or $7,000 a year or $8,000 a year. Is that sufficient enough for you to be able to build enough wealth over time to be able to retire?
That part. Yeah. It's why, because so many people, I don't care where you are, what platform you're on, you do at least 3 or 4 scrolls, you're going to hear somebody talking about a Roth IRA. What they're not talking about are limitations like this that make it impossible for this to be the pay the taxes on the seeds. Well, if you're only planting 2 or 3 seeds, darling, what are you eating? What's the harvest?
Right.
What are you excited about? And there's still a risk involved in whether or not the seeds that you plant are actually going to grow into fruit, trees, whatever the case is. But what if you plant a couple seeds and then all you get are those little weird carrots? Nobody wants those. Nobody's eating on those like, hooray, maybe if you're starving. But if you get the little weird ones, you're just like, I thought this was going to be big, beefy one I want to take a picture of. But that's not always the case. You don't know until it's done growing, because you can't keep digging it up to go look at it, right? And that's kind of the case here, is that if you're only planting a few seeds, then it matters greatly, each and every one of them.
So, and here's the thing. The factor around putting away the max inside of an IRA or Roth IRA and putting yourself in a position to where you can retire, is that possible? Absolutely it is. Millions of people do it all the time. But let's have some real truth around what that means, though. Because of this little thing called the 4% rule, what do you need to have inside of that Roth IRA for it to be able to produce the income that you're needing? And that's the part that people usually miss. Meaning, IRAs do a pretty good job of I'll call it accumulating net worth. IRAs do a pretty good job of amassing wealth, but they do a horrible job of distributing wealth. They do a horrible job of producing income. So even if you are able to produce a Roth IRA that puts you in a position to where you can, I'll call it, produce the income, or not produce the income, put your money in a Roth IRA that allows it to build to enough inside of it, like $1 million. You think that $1 million is going to produce something that can actually replace your job, only to learn that's $40,000 a year. And then when you throw inflation on top of that, how is that even impacted? And so what I really learned from this gentleman is this was a true goal. Meaning, and how about this? Shouldn't it be a goal? Meaning, I'm 30 years old, I'm paying off my home. I paid off my home by 37. Shouldn't a reward for me getting rid of the largest debt that most of us have, getting rid of that largest debt, put us in a position to where we could actually fire our job at some point? Like, shouldn't that be a part of the I'll call it end of that equation? But show me the retirement vehicle, show me the traditional retirement vehicle that will allow you to do that.
Yeah, if they can achieve that, why can't they retire early?
Right.
And you're right, because $40,000 a year and 35 years from now, which would be like the retirement age that he could start drawing that from, would be the equivalent of $14,000 today. What are you doing? Paying your light bills with that? Because that's really all you're doing, is paying utility bills when you're retired. It's not enough. It's not enough. You better really like carrots and really honestly learn to plant them.
And well, and I think, and to that point around the beating inflation part, it's understanding if the goal is to retire early, what is that number? What is the
Yeah.
value that you need at that point in time? And doing the math around, okay, if what I'm going to need is 150, $200,000 a year in income based off the fact that a dollar today looks way different tomorrow, then what are those vehicles that are going to get me there? So I work backwards from that $200,000 to understand what are those things that I need to put in place today at age 37. Yeah, I'm debt free from the position of I don't have a mortgage, but what do I need to be doing right now today in order to be able to hit that dollar amount in the future is the key.
Yeah. And to Nathan's point, don't forget it's also taxed.
Right. Because again, this is an IRA and not a Roth IRA. So you're right. That means that when he's ready to take a distribution, again, calling out that $1 million that less than 2% of Americans actually achieve inside their retirement account. Let's say he actually is able to hit it because he's already doing things that he's in that percentile of people that are hard to reach as it relates to paying off your home. So let's say they make it into that under 2%. You're right. There's still going to be a tax impact on top of the 4% rule. And then leverage. So becoming debt free, how does your ability to have leverage or use leverage, how is that impacted? Because usually I've had this conversation like 3 times this week already around, hey, I'm debt free. So therefore I don't like to accumulate debt because I've become accustomed to not having debt. The idea of me having a home equity line of credit and leveraging some debt to be able to either pay a bill or generate wealth, that's hard for me to wrap my head around. And so having, your assets being free and clear and your savings being healthy, but what is that impact of your ability to be able to leverage the asset you have to be able to generate wealth? It is greatly impacted. Not only to mention, if it's the leverage that's impacted, how do you get the leverage? Well, you have to qualify for it. And so in your ability to be able to because one of the first things that happens when you pay off a large debt is your credit score drops. So what happens when you pay off your home? So at age 37, what happened to this couple once they paid off their home? The credit score dropped. And if you listen to any of the baby steppers, you're supposed to be okay with that. You're supposed to be
Right.
okay with the fact that, matter of fact, your credit score dropping actually means you're doing the right thing. But if the
Because you
goal
don't need to
is to be able
use
to,
credit
right,
because
right,
it's
exactly. So if the goal is to be able to leverage your home because it's free and clear to be able to put you in a position to where you can actually generate income, then how easy will it be for you to be able to qualify for some of those items to be able to do that?
So what are they doing if you've paid off your home and now you have retired? Because in the beginning when we were talking about the debt-free disasters, the idea of being debt-free is only great in theory, but when you realize all of the other things that come along with it, you go, why would I have chosen this? Because now I can't move anywhere. This was about freedom, and now I feel more imprisoned because of this situation than ever before. I'm debt free and I cannot make moves. I cannot do what I want to do. I cannot go where I want to go. And this asset that I thought was great and wonderful is now locked up in a prison, and I have to have permission to get it. The banks don't care how responsible it was of me to pay this off so early and have been debt free for so long. You would think that is what your credit score would go up because you did all that, right?
Right.
That you would be rewarded for that, but you're not. So what are they doing? These people who have already done this, because the concept of being debt free, FIRE, retire early, baby steps, all of this have been around for decades. So what are people doing now when they've already done this, paid off their home, and they get to this point?
Right. And in this couple's, I guess in this couple's example, what are
Okay.
they currently doing? What they're doing is they're taking now that the debt is paid off, hey, I'm free and clear here, but I've got this $1,000 a month that I'm able to put to work. And I've got this IRA, this IRA that I'm able to put to work as well. So what is happening with that $55,000 that's growing on top of the $1,000 a month that I have, as well as how is that
Mm-hmm.
IRA performing? And this is actually great performance over time. What we're talking
Yeah.
about is what I looked at is a 20-year span. So from age
Okay.
37 to 57, what does it look like over time inside of a vehicle like this? So I think they're doing a good job of putting their money to work. But the question is, when it's time to retire, Meaning, if the objective is to retire early, and you're sitting here with an asset worth 458,000 in an IRA and 333,000 as it relates to your savings account at age 57, does that equate to what it is you need to be able to retire? I don't think that's a shabby number, but the truth around the income part is it's not. It's not the dollar amount that you think it is, nor is it the dollar amount you need, either based
Right.
off inflation or just time in general. And I think that's the part where we just have to be realistic around what does this math look like. If the goal is to retire early, what is the income I need to be able to achieve that?